Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining in. Today, we're going to be talking about the psychology of micromanagement and how to coach a micromanager. If you are watching this live or catching the replay, thank you so much for tuning in. For those joining live, I have a special bonus at the end. I'm going to stop the recording after the workshop, and I am going to welcome any coaching questions. So if you have any general questions that you would like to ask me about anything that I do, or maybe something that you need help with, I am going to make some time for that, and I'm really excited to offer that to anybody who's joining live today. So let's get started. First, before we jump into the topic, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I am a licensed psychotherapist in the state of Kansas, and I am an executive leadership coach. I have a background in manufacturing and expansion planning in manufacturing, altogether about 15 years of experience in HR. And I have been a coach and consultant for about the last 5 years full time. So I love, 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 love sharing my knowledge and teaching skills and just helping other people support themselves. So I have I would say, eclectic combination of things, but I love it. So anyway, so today we're going to talk about the psychology of micromanagement and in coaching strategies. So why do we want to talk about this? Why is it important? And I think that for me, it starts always with my passion for learning how people think and understanding people's behavior. And so when we understand the psychology of micromanagement, we can not only better coach our leaders, but we can also support ourselves when we are in high stress. And so, micromanagement is definitely a matter of, I would say, controversy sometimes because, in my experience, I've had micromanagers that have exposed me, I would say, to like some workplace trauma. Like it's been really toxic, and in other situations, like I've personally, like on a personal level, I've loved that manager who micromanaged me, but I understood that they were very stressed and did not have a lot of experience, in management. And so, as a therapist, I have a lot of empathy for anybody who's struggling with anything. And so I try to, I guess, empathize with both sides and just to let you know that if you are someone who's gotten feedback that you are a micromanager or anything like that, know that there's no judgment from me and that there is help. And hopefully we're going to learn some things here today to help you. Now, if you, are not a micromanager and perhaps you have someone in your team, maybe a coworker or someone that you manage, who has those tendencies, then hopefully this will give you some information on how to better communicate with them or relate to them or support them or coach them. So that's why we want to talk about that today. Okay, I see some other people signing on. Welcome in. I don't know if you can see the links that I've shared on the chat, but if you, let me see if I can drop them in real quick. Hope that makes sense there. Okay. Um, okay, so let's see. So one of the things that we want to do is understand the psychological roots of micromanagement. So I'll go into a little bit more about that, and then also recognizing the science of micromanagement in the workplace. What does that look like? And then also learning some practical coaching techniques to address micromanagement. Anytime that I have joined a workshop or a webinar or anything like that, I sometimes I've been like kind of brain dead at the end of it. So I am really hoping to bring a fresh hour that you have with me where you get to learn some stuff, but then take some very practical tools you can take away from you and also have an opportunity to engage and interact. So, but by any means, throughout this, if you want to raise your hand, if you have any questions, put them on the chat, send an emoji, unmute yourself. I am totally happy with that. Just know that this is being recorded and it's going to be shared. So if you're worried about that, you might want to just put that on the chat, but I absolutely welcome the interaction. All right. How's everybody feeling? Can you give me send a message on the chat? Let me know how we're doing. Any questions? Good. Please give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Everything good? Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. So in the workbook, I have included a self-assessment. Okay. So I am going to go through this just a little bit, just so that we can take a second here to gain some self-awareness. Maybe you came in thinking that someone else has more of an issue with this than you do, and then maybe after going through this, you can gain some perspective, or maybe you have those tendencies and you want some kind of like reassurance, validation, and this may help you get some more clarity. Or you're coaching someone who has that, and this could help you understand them a little bit better. So, on the first page there of the workbook, there's the self-assessment. Basically, you can rate each statement 1 to 5. 1 could be rare, it's rarely, and then 5 would be frequently. So, number 1 is I feel the need to oversee every task in detail. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Does it depend? Yeah, maybe. Number 2, I struggle to delegate important responsibilities. Is that depending on the situation, the person, how stressed you are sometimes? Do the best you can in answering that truthfully. Let's see. Number 3, I get frustrated when employees make decisions without consulting me. Okay, so I'm going to give you a minute to go through them. I won't read all of them out loud, but you see where I'm coming with this. Like there's very specific behaviors and things that we do when we're micromanaging. Maybe I'll read one more that stands out to me. Employees hesitate to ask me questions or admit mistakes out of fear of my reaction. Okay, so whether that happens with you or someone in your team, that's a really important one to look out for. Guys, by the way, if you see a fly in here, I don't want to ignore the little fly in the room, but if you see it, please, I apologize. I live in Kansas at a farm, by the way. So yeah, it's already the time of the year. I know it's only February 26th, but it's sunny here. It's warm already, and there's a fly in our workshop. So let's roll with that. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about understanding the psychology of micromanagement. So where does micromanagement stand from? Okay. And so I wanted to narrow this down as much as I could. And I think the number one thing here that I see personally is fear of failure or fear of losing control. And the reason why I picked that as number 1 is because when we're micromanagement, um, there is there is typically a stress level, right? You are an anxious leader at this point. And so when you're feeling anxious because there is something or someone that you can't control, and not being able to control that could make you fearful that there could be a failure, a mistake, excuse me, and that could look bad on you, or you're fearful to lose your job or lose your reputation or whatever it is. And so it doesn't mean that you're a bad person, that you just want to control people. It's not to that extreme, although that's very possible to see as well. But what it is it's definitely, I would say, an emotional. It comes from a strong emotion of anxiety, and so something to look out for is, when you're taking actions in leadership, where is that coming from? Is that coming from a place of, is this serving me? Is this serving my team? Is this really necessary, or is this coming from a place of fear or loss of control? Okay. Number 2, trust issues and perfectionism. And I definitely can identify with this a lot as a leader and as a coach as well. Okay, so trust issues, I would say is number two, just because um, when we are micromanaging, I'll give you, we haven't gone to the science of micromanagement, but one thing that we see a lot is over involvement in small details. When you're micromanaging, you want to really be overly involved and you want to know every little single thing, and so there could be a trust issue that if you don't get overly involved, like maybe you don't trust yourself that you're going to do a great job. And so you don't trust yourself that, maybe you're going to miss something, right? We also see it when it comes to delegating. If we're not delegating very effectively, then perhaps there's a trust issue there because we don't trust our team members to do a great job, or we don't trust them to make a mistake and being able to correct them on their own. That you're fearful that perhaps they're going to need you, and then you're going to have to spend time, cleaning up the mess. Okay. So so far I just wanna hear from the chat here. Does this resonate with you? Have you seen this in your career? Can you see that like beyond the behavior, be behind the micromanagement? Can you see that maybe there's a fear of failure, if you have lost control, trust issues? Yeah. Okay. Amber says absolutely. Rena says yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. Good. Um, okay. So then the next one is a lack of confidence in team members' abilities. And I include this, as a separate item, right? Because if you have trust issues in your team members, like maybe you also have a lack of confidence in them. But here's the thing is that when I coach micromanagers, I can tell you that a lot of times in my experience, first of all, they are amazing to talk to. They are so passionate. They love what they do. A lot of times they have grown with the company. Like they started as an entry level, and over the years they work up the ladder. And in every industry, I'm sure that's true, but in manufacturing, I see that so much. Um, and so they love their team. I mean, they love their team, but they are really struggling to delegate. They're really struggling to let go because they have been so involved in the operations and the day to day, and that's what they know, right? Unfortunately, when you lack confidence in your team members' abilities, because maybe you just do know what you know and you've been there for so long and they don't have the experience you have, it really limits you in how you grow your team. And even though you trust them, even though you think, well, I don't have a fear of failure, I just don't think that my team members have the ability to execute, that is micromanagement, right? Because you're being rigid. You're being rigid about how you're managing your team. You're not letting go, right? If you lack the confidence in the team member's ability, a lot of times we say, well, they just don't have enough experience. They just need more time. But the reality is, you as the leader need to be in charge of that. You actually have more ability, or you're more empowered than you believe in teaching them or filling in the gaps, right? So if you lack confidence that they don't have the ability yet, we need to put together a plan on how can we feel more confident in their abilities to execute. Okay, so be more involved in their development versus their tasks, their everyday tasks. Does that make sense? Raise your hand if that's making sense. I appreciate that. Awesome. Okay. So here's one more. Where does micromanagement stand from? Okay. And by the way, I'm gonna drop the links just one more time there. If you're joining in kind of last minute, you didn't get a chance to fill out the registration form. Make sure that you fill that in so I can follow up with you. I can send you the replay and the workbook, and then the second link gives you access to the workbook. All right. So the last one on where does micromanagement stand from is personal anxiety and deep-seated insecurities. Okay, and that's where my I would say like my psychotherapy or mental health training comes in a little bit more strongly here because one may think, well, what is being insecure and having anxiety have to do with micromanagement? But now that maybe we've talked through a few things, maybe this becomes more obvious that um, maybe it has nothing to do with how you feel about your team or that you're going to lose control, but maybe you have some anxiety in your personal life, and that's, creeping into your professional life as well. Perhaps you're going through a divorce. Maybe, you're struggling with infertility issues. Maybe you lost a parent. Maybe you're going through like something just really hard. It doesn't have to be something, catastrophic, but maybe it's just you're struggling personally. And we are human beings. Okay. And that personal, situation, it creates the self-doubt in us, and we cannot we can't stop being humans at work. And so it shows up as much as we want to be in control without addressing this personal anxiety and these insecurities about ourselves and how we cope. Without addressing that, then we're going to have these micromanagement tendencies. Okay. And so with that being said, I would highly recommend that you get more focused if you identify with that more, that you focus more on your self-care and on your mental health, and your overall well-being. Okay. How does that sound? Who likes self-care here? Who likes self-care? Okay, you know what? This actually could be fun. I'm welcoming a couple other people that are joining in a little bit late. I'm going to drop those links again here just one last time because I just want everybody to feel included and follow along. But okay, so let's do something fun about self-care because this is how we are proactive about handling anxiety, right? Tell me one thing that you do for self-care. It's okay if you haven't done it in a while or if you just did it yesterday, but what's one thing that you enjoy? Okay. Exercise. Okay. What else? It's okay if you don't, you know what? If you don't practice self-care, there's no judgment here. Maybe it's something that you would like to do. How about that? Maybe it's something that you would like to do for self-care. Okay. Go to the gym. Okay. Oh, siesta. Okay. A nap. I'm bilingual, so I caught that one. Okay. Have a meal. Have a meal with myself. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Like a special meal or just like having alone time, like just slowing down to have a meal, a good meal. Okay. Just alone time. Yeah, I'm with you. And I'm an extrovert, by the way. I'm an extrovert. I like to do social things, but there are times where I just need to be alone. Alone. Like this morning at 5 in the morning when I went for a swim. Oh my gosh. That was amazing. I was just alone. There was nobody in the pool. It was quiet. I loved it. I loved it. Um, very good. So these are, physical things. So I just want to bring up that self-care, and I know I'm going a little bit on a tangent here, but I promise I have a point. We look at self-care as a way to take care of our bodies a lot of times, right? And I want to tell you that self-care can definitely be broken down into several categories. And um, professional or workplace self-care is a thing. It's absolutely a thing. So if you are working with a micromanager or you are a micromanager yourself, I am telling you that there are things that you can do at work where you are taking care of yourself. And that means learning how to say no. That means setting boundaries, controlling, or that might be a great word since we're talking about micromanagement, but take control of your calendar is what I was going to say. Take control of your calendar and, be empowered to stand up for yourself and not going along with the crowd, right? Speak up, right? These are different things that you can do. Carve out time for lunch and have a meal with yourself, like Amber suggested. These are things that you can do to take care of yourself. So when you're doing this, your anxiety is managed, your stress levels are managed, and you're going to be able to have more relief, to have more confidence, to feel better, and then you will show up as a less anxious leader for your team. All right. So let's talk about the impact on business and team dynamics, right? Because a lot of us here are in leadership, and I'm kind of curious. Can y'all write on the chat if you don't mind there? How many years have you been in leadership? And if you are in HR, and sometimes we don't say like leadership, but if you're in an HR role, that is, I consider that to be a leadership role. So could you just drop the number of years you've been in leadership? I'm just curious. How long? I bet you we have lots of years. Lots of years. Okay. 15, 12-ish. All right. Very good. Okay. Some of these are coming to me individually, by the way. Okay. 12 years, 10 years, 15 years. Okay. And HR leadership, 13 years. Very good. So we have lots of experience here, right? We're not newbies. Let's see, 6 years of experience. Very good. And so it's important for us, right? If we're in leadership, our leadership is tied to the performance of the company. And so we need to understand how our behaviors impact the bottom line, how our behaviors impact the business. And it does because it impacts our performance, but it also impacts team dynamics. Okay, so I'm going to use the board here just to change it up a little bit. Let's see. So we see morale being an impactor. There's a decreased employee morale and engagement. There's also issues with innovation. Okay, and there's also turnover. Oh my gosh, and there's so many ways that the business can be impacted. But let's break these down a little bit more. So, decrease employee morale and engagement seems like an obvious one, right? Because if you have a toxic work environment, if you have, tendencies of micromanagement, if it's not addressed, these tendencies of micromanagement can really, it just spreads like fire. It really does. Have you ever been like around, you know, negativity, just overall in life, like negativity or rigidness or anxiety. And all of a sudden you're finding yourself feeling kind of tense or like taking that stress in. Like, can you tell me, like, can you say honestly, if you don't, that's awesome. Please teach me how more because, I work on that a lot myself. But can you relate to that? Like when you're around negativity or stress, right? Like, we like to say when we're in our job descriptions, when we work in fast pace, like, here on this call, I have people in manufacturing, but I think I also have people here in retail as well. And um, we put on our job descriptions like ability to work in like fast-paced environment, and like what we're really saying is like, can you handle a stressful environment that's always changing, right? That's very dynamic. And I've been in talent acquisition for a long time. So if you disagree, that's cool, but that's my opinion. Okay, 100%, I'm getting haha. Okay. So you agree with me, right? I mean, you agree with me that when we say fast paced, what we're really saying is this is chaos, okay? Like we're not trying to lie, but we're just saying, can you keep up? So, it is what it is. It is what it is. And so, when we're in that kind of environment, even if we find ourselves being like a more like mindful, I like to go to yoga, I like to hang out and like slow down in my own time. Like when you're at work, you're like, I don't know where that personality went, but it's out the window. And so that's what it is. We are a product of our surroundings, right? And so, of course, if we have micromanagement, right, it's going to affect the morale because it's affecting the culture. It's affecting how people engage and interact in our relationships. And we have to really look out for that. So when we have someone who's micromanagement, it's affecting, or someone who's micromanaging, it's going to affect the team. It's going to affect the morale. And absolutely, all those things affect, right? Turnover, which is here on the list, right? It's on your workbook. And when we have team members that are feeling low, are feeling controlled, they can't speak up, there's not going to be a lot of collaboration going on, right? I mean, if I'm not giving the freedom, I mean, personally, I can tell you that I'm that way. If I don't have the space to think or to think for myself, right? If I am always expected to do this like very rigid, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and you can't step out of that, there's not going to be a lot of room for innovation. And this is really important in any industry, but any industry that focuses on continuous improvement as a way to stay in business and grow as a business. It's really important that you allow employees to thrive in having open communication where they feel that there's a level of psychological safety that they can really just come up and say, you know what? I've been noticing an issue, and this is what I think the solution should be, right? But when we hear that, if we start to get defensive, well, that's not how I would do it, or that's not what I told you to do, because we're wanting to be in control, because we all those things. It really prevents people from speaking up. And here's the thing: when we do that once, twice, three times, all of a sudden nobody's saying anything because let's face it, people talk, right? Like bad news spreads fast, doesn't it? Bad news spreads really fast. If you have a leader in your team, and if you are that leader, if you're finding that out, there's no problems, nobody's saying anything, everything must be good. Um, I promise you, not everything is okay. Because there's always going to be someone who has something to say. So if you don't hear a whole lot, let's wonder why nobody's speaking up. And maybe there's something about our leadership that we need to look at. Okay. So, I'm not going to say much more than that, but I am curious, what do you think, agree or disagree, or if you have a different opinion, is the impact on business? How does micromanagement impact the business and team dynamics? Anything that you'd like to add? Let's do a little bit of thinking here. Yes, yes, agreeing with innovation. Good, good. What else? How else can it impact the business? And maybe you can speak from personal experience as well. Suppresses growth. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. It really limits. There's a limitation that we're putting on growth. And when I think of growth, I don't know if you meant like business growth, like business development, or if you meant like professional career development, but however way you meant it, both. Yeah. So business, professional leadership growth. I would say that even personal growth, it prevents it. Yeah, it keeps you stuck or sets you behind. Very good. Thank you guys for adding to the conversation. Making decisions that are tone deaf, yeah, not relevant for team members. I like that. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It impacts our decision making skills for sure. And we're not able to relate to others when we do that. And so I think if I'm reading in between the lines to in between the lines, if it's not relevant for team members, it means that maybe you are giving instructions or deciding on things that people are not getting on board with because it doesn't relate to them, they don't care, or they don't understand the importance of it. Yeah, did I kind of get that right, Rena? Thank you so much for adding to the conversation. Yes. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So let's move on to the next part of the workshop. And I am on page 3 of the workbook, by the way, if you're following along. Identifying the signs of micromanagement. So the first one I will say is cognitive, emotional, and behavioral patterns. Okay. So what are the signs? Okay. Okay. So I put these in different categories. And anybody who's into mental health loves the word cognitive and maybe behavioral cognitive, but emotional too. I like to throw that in there. And we don't think oftentimes about emotions or being emotional when we're talking about leadership because sometimes that could be seen as a sign of a weakness or oversharing or emotional being maybe you think of someone like crying a lot or something like that, but that's not necessarily what that means. So I'll break it down a little bit more, but so we got some cognitive, and cognitive is just the way that we process information, just our line of thinking. Emotional, this is just your language of feelings, so your set of emotions. And then behavioral, it's basically you're taking the way that you think and the way that you feel, and then your actions, right? Your actions come out. So um a micromanager is going to be involved in small details, like overly involved, right? They might want you to like CC them in every email, or maybe they're requiring like unnecessary like signatures, or you can't have a meeting if they're not there, or you can't proceed with solving an issue without letting them know or running it by them, those kinds of things. Another one would be hesitation to delegate important tasks, right? And so here, this is such a big issue with leadership, right? When we're growing as a leader and we're wanting to go from being operational to more strategic, this is a very tricky place to be. And whether you consider yourself a micromanager or not, delegating important tasks in any level of your leadership is critical. And even at a CEO level, right? A business owner, right? The ability to delegate is so important, but the hesitation to delegate important tasks will depend on how you think about what's important and their ability to carry out what you need them to do. Emotionally, right? How you feel about the task, how you feel about the possibility of failure, and then how you behave as a leader, and how you delegate. exactly. Like, how do you approach delegating, right? How do you communicate delegating as well? Um, so everybody is aware here with the defense mechanisms, right? Like, related to mental health, like, right? Like one defense mechanism could be avoiding, right? Maybe being defensive, right? That's one. Um, Maybe you are too overwhelmed and you need to like just leave, right? Right. And so like these are things that we want to become aware of, because if we are hesitating to delegate, um, that self-doubt and that anxiety, we're gonna tend to come up, bring in our defense mechanism. Like maybe because we're hesitant, we're avoiding delegating the important task. And the way that we can get around that is maybe sending an email as opposed to having a conversation. And maybe that important task like required a conversation. Or maybe you want to have everything written down, like on paper, documented. So you consider that an email would be best. Um, does that make sense? So sometimes when we hesitate to delegate, uh, and we don't lead with confidence, then maybe we delay. Like maybe we also delay delegating, and we wait until it's too late, and now we have to rush, right? We have to rush to get things done and all these different things. So, any event. Also, another sign of micromanagement is constantly checking in and requiring excessive updates as well. And another one is reacting negatively to independent decision making, and that's when another one of the defense mechanisms, like when you get really when you want to, like the fight mode, like you're on the defense, right? And so when someone tells you, oh yeah, this is what I did about the situation, and you're just like caught off guard, and you're like, wait, why did you do that? Or when did you, or why was what wasn't involved? And so it comes off really as you're not letting them make decisions on their own. And so watch out for that one, because that's I don't know. I feel like that's not a very obvious one. Okay. So um let's talk about a different category here, workplace impact. So this is another way that we can look at signs of micromanagement. Okay, we have workplace impact. Okay. So again, we are in business. We're all leaders, so we care about the I'm saying bottom line, but when I say bottom line, I don't necessarily mean like like the dollars, but I guess it could look that way, but also indirectly the results or the performance of the business. And if you're in HR, you can relate to some of the things that I have on here, because hiring could really be something that can be affected if you have micromanagement for many different reasons. Because excuse me, if the people who are in charge of hiring are micromanagers, they may be looking, perhaps not explicitly, right? Not intentionally, but they might be looking for people that they feel that are quote unquote coachable, meaning people that they can maybe control. Again, not ill-intended, not because they want to be like mean people controlling others, but because they want to make sure they can do the job how they need them to do it. Does that make sense? So, do you follow what I'm saying? Like, does that resonate? Right. So who is hiring, right? If they have micromanagement tendencies, is going to affect who you bring into the company, right? And how you interview them, and even the onboarding process, right? Even selecting the people, or even how you acquire talent, even in your conversations about compensation, all of that. If they have a lack of trust, right, that other people can do the work, and they feel like those people need to really prove themselves, quote unquote, um, there is like a fear, a loss of or a loss of control. Uh, yeah, so someone in the chat says, Rena says, totally, you don't want to set up the new hire for failure under that manager. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And even as an HR professional, like sometimes it's an area. I mean, all different positions can see a lot of that, but I find that because I have experience in HR, that there's so much attention to detail, right? And missing one little detail sometimes can be so detrimental that fear of like forgetting or being too lax, right? And then you miss that little detail. That can bring a lot of anxiety. And so, because a lot of the work that we do has to do with either performance management or hiring, it can show up in our work in that way. So, on performance management, I will say that, rigid control rather than results driven feedback is something that I see. And, it's just really interesting how we give feedback. And I'll just say this, that I love ongoing conversations. I think that feedback should be more of a part of how you build a relationship. And I think you need to see, as a leader, you should see yourself as a coach rather than just a manager of performance. Okay. And that you should have flexibility. You should have flexibility and understand that everybody's different, and that you're going to get more out of people when you trust them and when you guide them. Uh, because not everybody fits the same mold. Okay. Um, let's see. And lastly, decision making. Micromanagers tend to delay or overanalyze decisions. That's definitely something that comes up, you know, in my sessions, or even in my sales calls, when executives or HR directors, tell me two things. Usually, it's there's our frontline leaders need some help with decision making and communication. Those are two of the top things that I usually hear. And there is a reason that has to do more with the psychology, or their stress level, of why people are not feeling confident to make decisions. Like, why are they depending on you so much to decide on, writing someone up or letting go of someone? Like, it's not just that they don't have the capability, but they're depending on you to make decisions. And so it's really up to you to stop enabling that and to encourage them and coach them in how to do that. Encourage them to make a decision and really talk about, okay, tell me what's going on, what's holding you back um, from letting that person go, or what's holding you back from writing that person up, right? And they'll tell you, like, oh, I'm just really busy, I have a lot going on. Or, okay, but if you had the time, is there something else? Like, really try to work through that with them, and maybe even ask them, how's your stress level? How are you doing? I know sometimes we feel a little bit weird about maybe crossing a line, but you can be concerned as a leader and as a person in HR, in the well-being of your employees, and you can tell them that. Look, I want to make sure I care about your well-being, and I just want to know, is there anything you need? Are you stressed? Have you taken time off lately? Those kinds of things, because sometimes that anxiety level has a lot to do with how we're making decisions. And of course, if you want to talk a little bit more about that, I'm happy to help you with that. So, I'm going to take a few more minutes to talk to you and leave you with some techniques that you can use, three effective coaching techniques for micromanagers. And then, as I promised at the beginning of the call, if you're at the beginning of the call, I am going to stop the recording. And then, anybody who wants to stick around, I am happy to provide some group coaching. So, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask me about today's topic or anything else that is mental health or leadership development related, I am happy to support you with that. So, please stay until the end if you want to get some coaching today. Okay, so. Three effective coaching techniques for micromanagers. So self-coaching and coaching others. The first thing is the awareness and reflection. And these, believe it or not, are skills that we can develop. Um, so, uh, helping a micromanager recognize their behaviors and their triggers can be something very, very useful. I have that self-assessment in the workbook, so that is something that you can use in this for this. Advice here is to go through those questions, or rate yourself or rate the other person, have them rate themselves, and just use that as a way to initiate the conversation and encourage them to share their thoughts or reflect yourself about what that means for you. Okay. And then also, we talked earlier in the workshop about self-care practices. So, journaling, having conversations about performance, tracking or celebrating those. And then also, I think acknowledging your small wins, right? Like sometimes we think of accomplishments as something really big or something professional, but honestly, like I'll tell you today, I woke up extra early. I went for a swim. I used the steam room, and yes, that was self-care. That was awesome. But the part that I celebrated the most about that personally was that I had a late night last night, and I still went and exercised and looked out for myself, and that being aware of that and celebrating that, validating that is so empowering because it makes me feel good about myself. And I'm telling you this not because I'm like, oh, you should be like me. But rather because, rather because, oh, thank you so much for joining the call, guys. There's a couple people that are heading out a little bit earlier, but I'll send out the replay. But yeah, I think it's not a matter of like doing the exercise, although that's really great and having a routine, but I think it's the self-coaching that you do and teaching that and coaching that to others and letting them know that you can anyone can celebrate their wins, their personal wins, because when you're winning personally, that positivity and those skills transfer to your professional life. And the other way can be true as well. If you are, celebrating your professional wins, that helps you build confidence, and on a personal level, that makes you feel good, and that's encouraging. Here's another technique that I want to share with you. So, trust building strategies. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll know that I definitely is something that I talk about quite a bit. And building trust is so important, and it's easier said than done, right? Like taking all these new tools and implementing them, but know that you can gradually build this trust. It's not something that you can just flip a switch, right? I totally understand that. So one thing you can do is gradually delegating exercises. So meaning you look at the important task and you realize what things you need to delegate, and you pace yourself in how you are delegating that, and check in with yourself about how you feel about it, and having open conversations about why that's important, and why are you letting go of this, and what your expectations are of your team member, while also encouraging them and empowering them to take this on. I mean, that I think that within that of itself builds trust. If you're letting someone know, look, I know that I haven't delegated this task before, and I just been so used to doing it, and I've had some concerns, but I realized that as I work on myself that I need to teach you how to do this task because that's going to help you grow, and I trust that you're going to do it, and if you make a mistake, I want you to be okay with coming to me. So just having that open communication alone builds trust. And that is the psychological safety discussion. It's basically letting someone know that it's okay to make a mistake. And if you do, like, this is the protocol. This is what I would like you to do. Or even ask them, what would you do? What would work best for you to support you in taking on this new task? Okay. Lastly, number three, reframing control and leadership mindset. So the way that we think about it, shifting from controlling to coaching, teaching supportive leadership behaviors, and also practicing open-ended questions and active listening. And that within itself can be an entire workshop. So I'm going to leave you with that just because we're running out of time here today. Again, thank you so much for joining, and I will see you next time. Every month, I'm going to be doing a free workshop at probably the last week of the month. So if you're on LinkedIn, watch out for those postings. And I'm going to commit myself to doing this until the end of June. And then after that, we'll see how it goes. But we're doing this together, and I just want to share some practical tools. So if you have any questions, please reach out. I would love to talk to you one-on-one. So DM me on LinkedIn or schedule a call. The link is on my feature section. But I am going to stop the recording, so I'll see you guys if you're watching the replay. And then I am going to offer here some bonus coaching, individual coaching. So I'm going to stop the recording here. Okay, thank you.